Left versus right. Us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin with Rochester today. Thank you so much for joining us here on this wonderful Wednesday afternoon. We're live here at WYSL until 2 p.m. Give us a call if you want to participate in the show, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Or leave your comments online. Of course, we're streaming on the Free Solution Facebook page, Free Solution YouTube channel, and the Kevin Wilson pages. Appreciate y'all being here. So topics of today's show. We're gonna. There's a couple other updates to the Twitter stuff, man. I hate to say, I'm sort of addicted to seeing the news now. You know, maybe they're right in releasing it in small chunks because now it is building a narrative. It's interesting. I think that it's a little bit complicated. I'm not going to spend the whole show on it this time, though. I'm just going to spend segment one because I think there's a couple interesting updates to it, and I want to follow up. I've been doing this now for a few days, so I want to follow up and see what that looks like. And then we're going to switch gears a little bit. We'll talk about the new omnibus bill. It's kind of every year the same nonsense with that. But I think it's worth talking about. I think it's worth recognizing. I think it's worth not making normal, right? Like Congress has kind of made it normal, but like we the people, their constituents need to say, hey, this isn't okay. Why do we do it this way every single year for forever? I mean, it's been ridiculous. And then after we get through those topics, I'm gonna talk about some local news too. City of Rochester is suing gun manufacturers, and we'll talk about that one. You know, what are they trying to do? What's the impact of that? Do they have a case, not have a case? And we'll see. You know, all I have is like the release information. We'll see what goes on with that. Buffalo's doing something similar. So we'll get to those topics later on in the show. But first, again, let's go back to that Twitter news. A couple other things that dropped. You know, again, a new set of Twitter files that dropped like as I was doing the show on Monday. So I wanted to give that some time to rest for the full thread to develop so I could see everything going on. But there's kind of two big pieces of news that came out of that, right? So one is that, you know, was Twitter being paid to censor information? And kind of the headline is, you know, Twitter gets $3.4 million for working with the FBI, right? Is it a bribe? Does that create bad incentives? I think those are questions worth asking, right? Like what the law says is that if a law enforcement agency makes a request of a private company, like in this situation, like they want to preserve a bunch of records, gather a bunch of stuff, whatever, that the company can ask for compensation for the time that it took their employees to do that stuff, right? And so the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, they're making so many requests to Twitter, so many requests that required a lot of like time and effort and therefore money that they asked for compensation. $3.4 million is a lot of money, but it also isn't for a company like Twitter. So I don't know that it was swaying their, their position, making them more likely to cooperate for this amount of money. It's just not enough for a company that big. But you could see how, like with a smaller company specifically, like that could end up tipping the scales a little bit. I just don't think that was the case with Twitter. And Twitter did push back on some of this stuff. You know, like a lot of these files kind of make Twitter look a little bit better, and the FBI, the government generally, looks so much worse. That's kind of what I'm getting out of this. Is like Twitter's complicated, right? There's stuff in there that I don't like, policies I don't always agree with, bad decisions that got made. But they're a company that is kind of on the wrong end of government trying to twist arms and being overzealous in terms of pursuing what it sees as dangerous misinformation, right? And this is something that the FBI has been on for a little while. It increased after the whole Russian misinformation campaign stuff. Like, oh, goodness, the Russians and other actors are trying to, make a concerted effort to disrupt our elections. Well, okay, right? Like that is something that's happening, but to what extent, again, does it matter? And to what extent does the FBI need to use a significant amount of resources to chase that down? And yeah, I think they overdid it. They're way too zealous, and again, this makes them look bad. And in this situation, with Twitter pushing back, the FBI pursuing this stuff, the FBI kind of strong arming Twitter into this. It's a call to reform the FBI, honestly. And here's the thing to keep in mind with this stuff. It's not specifically in favor of any one party or the other. Like this kind of transcends party. Like all this stuff happened during the Trump administration, right? Like who was sometimes seen as the beneficiary of foreign misinformation by folks on the left. Like the FBI, they were pursuing this, and I think the valid criticism of what could be called the deep state is in an action like this, right? Now, I'm not talking about the tinfoil hat stuff. I mean, like the government bureaucracy that exists like between and across administrations and multiple parties, right? Like the people who are lifers in some of these positions. You could argue they're in there for life because they're dedicated to the work of that, that agency or whatever, right? But also they have their own set of priorities distinct from whatever is going on in politics at this time. And that's how the FBI acted in this situation. It is government on autopilot. We're going to get to a little bit more of that in a sec when we talk about the congressional stuff, but it's government on autopilot. It's government that is beyond the political considerations. Some of that's not a bad thing. The FBI shouldn't be overly politicized, and that was the criticism of what happened in the run-up to the 2016 election and in the period after, that the FBI was acting in a political manner to benefit one candidate or the other. That's not great. But when there's a lack of accountability that the policy leaders that we elect, whether it's Donald Trump or Joe Biden or members of Congress or whatever, aren't able to, they're acting beyond what is appropriate in the scope of the job that we've given them, that's government run amok. That's government that is unaccountable to the people. That's government that is going to violate our rights. And it happens so often with these federal agencies that they've been given a directive from Congress to do like a vague thing, like protect the environment, keep us safe, whatever it is. And then instead of Congress setting clear rules and parameters around what these agencies ought to do, they then take a vague mandate and run wild with it. This is what that Supreme Court case was, by the way, with like the EPA going nuts on some stuff and writing new rules and regulations based on a very generous interpretation of a rule that Congress made. And then they take that again, run with their own sets of regulations that go beyond what was the original arguably scope and intent of Congress, and the Supreme Court kind of peeled that back again. That's a good thing. That's a good thing for democracy. That's a good thing for a constitutional republic to have Congress say, here are the sets and scopes of rules that you can set. Here's what is within the bounds of what you ought to do for this agency. This is what the intent was for this. And if they want to change that, if they want the EPA to go a bit further on something, if they want the FBI to go a bit further, there should be some direction from our elected leaders in that process. And in this case, it's not entirely clear, like, was the Trump administration behind this? Most likely not. It seems like they're off doing their own thing. And when that starts to happen, there needs to be a level of scale back. And that's kind of my general objection to the way that we've developed the executive branch over the last several decades, is that they are their own independent operating bureaucracies in their own way, that they spend millions of dollars. They can make laws, billions and billions of dollars. Lots of money. I said millions. My goodness, what decade is it? No, they can spend just an enormous amount of money. A lot of these programs are, again, almost on autopilot now, and people are acting independently. Now, I know the different heads of these agencies are appointed by the executive branch, but again, there's limited accountability. And when you have that, when you have Congress failing to do its job in so many different ways, you start to lose liberty. Because again, you have these people who are empowered to make rules and laws over our lives. And the laws in the sense that they can use the threat of force to act upon these rules that they've made if we don't comply with them. And it's different from the rule of law in terms of being able to develop consistent rules of society that we all can clearly understand and act upon, laws that are based on not hurting people and not taking their stuff, and we're set up in a legal process. This is a bit different. It starts to go beyond the scope of what our constitutional government intended or allows. So we're in a tough situation here, and I I started I kind of went on about this unaccountable government. There is another aspect of this that is important too, and I talked about this in the last show about how I think the major story here is the lack of consistent enforcement of the rules that Twitter had made, that they had given exceptions to political elites that are important ways of punishing folks that are different than what you and I would experience. So we're going to talk about that when we come back, and then talk about the big omnibus bill. Give us a call if you want to participate in the show, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. We'll be back here on A Free Solution in just a few minutes.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Hey, this is Kevin Wilson, host of A Free Solution. You ever needed a tool for just one project, but didn't want to spend the cash for something you'd use just once or twice? Well, there's a new tool library in Rochester where you can borrow just the thing you need instead of buying a new one. It's called the Tool Shed from the Southeast Area Coalition, and membership starts at just $25 a year. Use it for home projects or to support your business. Learn more and become a member at seektoolshed.org. That's SEAC toolshed.org.
Only available in the WISL store at WISL1040.com. Official top quality tees, hoodies, and coffee mugs depicting the colorful WISL logo or the already famous Mount Worstmore line of merch depicting Mount Rushmore style are for worst presidents. Of course, you know who is front and center up on that mountain. WISL official items make perfect gifts, or they're a great way for you to make a personal statement. Locally produced and sold only in the WISL store at WISL1040.com.
A free solution on the WYSL stations.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today. Thanks again for joining us here on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. Give us a call. We're live here on WYSL until 2 p.m. Give us a call at 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Or leave your comments online in the Free Solution Facebook page, Free Solution YouTube channel, the Kevin Wilson page, or the Kevin Wilson Twitter. Wherever you're listening today, appreciate y'all being here and being part of the show. And so we're talking about some of the latest Twitter file dropping, right? And I wanted to get to one more point about that before I move on to a different topic, which is that the other aspect of this is that this whole thing, like most of the files, right? The stuff related to the Hunter Biden stuff where the FBI, was kind of being like, hey, look out for fake news. There might be some fake news coming out soon about our political candidates and to try to hurt them. So keep on the lookout for that stuff. Not necessarily anything wrong with that in and of itself. And then the Hunter Biden stuff drops. Okay. Weird timing, maybe not. It's hard to say. And then, we gotta stop foreign propaganda, and Twitter had made this policy to say, okay, yes, we're going to do that, right? If we suspect that there are state actors who are not using official accounts, like this is different than the embassy accounts or like the official head of state accounts, which get they can basically break any rule they want, almost Donald Trump being like the maybe one exception to that. And so other official country accounts, right? Like White House accounts, treated a little bit different. We're talking about folks who are pretending to be average citizens who are trying to leverage the tools of the platform to spread misinformation, maybe misrepresent who they are to try to influence policy or culture in a given area, right? That's the stuff I talked about, where referencing back to one of my old interviews with a guy who used to work at Facebook, like there were state actors who would sometimes do that in the U.S., right? Like how much of an impact they had is debatable, but there were people trying to do that stuff, and it was the official policy of Facebook then and in Twitter that you can't do that. You can't, as a state actor, go and misrepresent yourself as an American citizen and try to like push a policy message. And same with Twitter. Now, all that being said, and again, the FBI is backing that up, saying that, you know, we're warning about this stuff happening, blah, blah, blah. What happened? Well, the Department of Defense was doing that this whole time. Again, during the Trump administration. So this is something they were doing then, is they create these like accounts, you know, that would be active in like, you know, different Arab countries. They might be active in Iran or something, or Saudi Arabia or Yemen, trying to support, you know, like there's accounts trying to support the war Saudi Arabia is engaging with the Yemen, which is just, gosh, just an awful thing. Like seriously, just a terrible, terrible thing that our government has been doing, continues to do, and it's absolutely worth being outraged over that. The government was using Twitter, making fake accounts with AI-generated profile pictures to try to influence policy in that region. And they would reach out to Twitter and say like, hey, we need you to whitelist these accounts. We know this is breaking the rules. We know that normally you guys would flag all these accounts because they look sketchy, and they're doing something that's in violation of the rules, and we want you to whitelist them. And yeah, they got exceptions to rule. That's the part that makes me mad. Like, again, elite exceptions to these rules that are put in place sometimes for good reason are a problem. And Twitter was trying to fight with the FBI about the extent to which they should be required to not take down these accounts. You know, they certainly were in violation of the rules, and they asked the Department of Defense to disclose all the accounts that were doing this type of stuff. And, you know, some of the folks in Twitter who are responsible for dealing with this would kind of come back and be like, hey, we know you said that you're doing it for these accounts, but also you're doing it with all these other accounts too. Please confirm whether or not these are your accounts doing this stuff, because they're smart. They're smart people there. They are able to figure this stuff out. And there's another, and that this is something that the American government does, for better or worse, right? Like it's something the American does to try to influence policy overseas. You know, there's the upfront stuff, like, you know, Radio Free Europe type stuff, which is it's American propaganda, better or worse. I think that's an accurate description of it. And they tried to do something similar by pretending to be people living in some of these countries where they're trying to influence policy. You know, in Russia, talking about Chinese policy, Middle Eastern policy, all this stuff, breaking the rules, doing the exact same thing that they were accusing other governments of doing, sometimes credibly so, but the exact same thing they're trying to get Twitter to take down other accounts for. And I don't know, that level of hypocrisy is just wild to me. It's not that there's any shame amongst the type of people who do that, but it's interesting to see that that's, while all this is going on, the U.S. government was doing the exact same thing. And I come out of this thinking like Twitter looks okay. They're in a difficult position, and they were debating about how and where to apply the rules, what legal precautions they could face for applying the rules inconsistently, or giving governments exception to these rules, or politicians exception to the rules. What are the PR and legal impacts of this stuff? It's a difficult position to be in, and I can appreciate that maybe they didn't make the right decisions all the time, but they were trying to be strong-armed by our government. And that's where the real scandal is here. It's not Twitter. It's not necessarily the leftists at Twitter. It's our government in a whole bunch of different ways trying to influence a major communication platform here in the U.S., and that communications platform struggling with how to adapt to that situation. But I do want to switch topics, man. I want to get onto a new topic to talk about the new bill that's coming out in Congress. And I talked about government on autopilot, right? How we have all these like this massive bureaucracy, all these agencies that you know, are kind of operating semi-independently, and how Congress has kind of relegated a lot of its power to the executive branch. Constant the theme on this show is to talk about how dangerous that is for liberty, how dangerous it is for a functioning constitutional republic, for Congress to constantly and consistently cede more and more of its authority to the executive branch. And of course, they do it internally too, within the branch of Congress itself. Justin Amash is a great person to follow on some of this stuff, where he talks about the power of the speaker and how so often they'll, not allow, and for years now, they haven't allowed floor amendments, not allow average members to participate in the building and modifying of bills. And they get these massive bills to vote on, and are told, like, okay, you have a couple days or a few hours sometimes to vote on this stuff, and this is how your party wants you to vote. So, well, who is making these decisions? Who did you elect to make these decisions on your behalf? How are we being represented in this situation if your representative is just following whatever the party leaders say? Of course, they don't have to. They can buck the trend, but they do so at significant risk. Justin Amash bucked the trend. Peter Meyer bucked the trend. There's all sorts of people within the Republican and Democratic parties who say, no, I'm not going to go along with this. And that means they don't get committee appointments, they don't get leadership positions, and they don't get any say in what ends up in the final bills. So what are they really doing there? And then they don't get support when they need re-election. How you go along to get along, unfortunately, and you're going to be able to sit in your seat and maybe one day from the House be able to actually have an influence on policy. But that erosion of the small d democratic process in our democratic republic is a serious blow to what a functional constitutional republic ought to look like. So again, just to give you a sense of scale in this too, again, the most recent bill is 4,155 pages and is $1.7 trillion. Is a massive bill. It's going to end up being slightly less than what we spent the last few years from the pandemic stuff, but it is still a massive increase over what we were doing before. Huge. There is no possible way members of Congress or their staff could even know fully what is in this bill. It is so huge. It is so massive that they're not your average rank and file member is not going to know what they're actually voting on. So they're just voting on either, well, my party says to vote yes, or my party says to vote no. Or you got people like Thomas Massey, to his credit, who's like, I can't even read this. Like, I can't get through this. How can I responsibly, as a member of Congress, as someone who is trying to win my constituents' trust, vote on something like this? And there are great members of Congress who do that. And then there are a few who say, yeah, I know I can't vote on it, or I don't know what's in it, but like there are some good things in it. We got to vote for it for those good things. And this is what ended up happening. You end up with people voting on this bill and someone will vote no, and they're like, oh, so-and-so member of Congress didn't vote to support education, or, oh, there's a marijuana banking bill in there. Oh, they didn't support that. I thought they were pro-marijuana, whatever, like whatever the dumb thing is that like members of Congress are going to like beat each other over the head with. It's absolutely ridiculous, as if like not supporting a massive bill that they can't know all the parts of is any reflection on stances of individual issues that get crammed into this bill that they can't possibly, or again, as if you have to make that choice to do that as a whole package. So I would hope that Congress can get out of this, right? This is a tough one, because what would be better, would be nice if they didn't do this every year, because they do this all the time, right? Like, oh, hey, if we don't pass this bill now, the government's going to shut down. It's going to be really serious. Imagine all the people who aren't going to get their benefits, and we're going to have to close down the parks and blah, 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 blah. Y'all had all year to figure this out, and you could have gone through the process the right way, the way that the founders and the Constitution intended, debated this stuff, come up with some compromises, and gotten something that works for the American people. Instead, we do this last-minute nonsense. We have been doing it for a while. It is so dysfunctional. All right, so when we come back, we'll talk about a little bit more about this bill and what Congress could do about it. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. Give us a call if you want to participate in the show, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
Pray for the USA. AM 1040 Avon Rochester, FM 92.1 Rochester, and FM 95.5 Spencerport.
Here's the news at NBC forecast on WYSL. For tonight, we'll see clouds increasing with a low temperature of 26. Then as we go into Thursday, mostly cloudy skies expected with a high of 40. But late in the day, we'll see rain arrive from the south. A few scattered showers will be possible through the overnight period. Could see a few wet snowflakes mix in early, but no effects to the roads are expected. For Thursday night, scattered showers are expected. Breezy conditions late with a low of 37. I'm First Alert Meteorologist Alex Bielfeld on your WYSL stations.
FM Talk.
Tour the days before Christmas. You can tell by the sound. The pace is so nuts, just fast food can be found. Shopping, the school play, decorations, and snow. For quality family food, where can you go? When what to your wondering eyes should appear but a juicy Wahlburger, a frosty root beer, handmade ice cream, crispy fries. Too busy to sit there? Then get it to go. And since Tom Wall's quality and value are things you can see, now you can get home to put up that tree. Tom Wall's wishes your family a season of cheer, a wonderful holiday, and a tasty new year. But just as you're settling tonight in your bed, hark! What's that sound that you hear overhead?
Oh, Merry Christmas to all, and make no mistake, it's not a hamburger, it's Tom Wall's ground steak.
A holiday greeting from Tom Wall's family to yours.
Tom Wall's.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Hi, Tom Hamilton here, President of Hamilton Wealth Management. Both the stock and bond markets have had quite a nice run since the 2008-2009 market crash. We sure don't want to give it all back again. Today, I think we need a different approach to investing in wealth preservation. Hamilton Wealth Management is an independent investment and wealth management firm located in Pittsford, New York. Our clients are successful individuals, retirees, and business owners who don't want to lose what they've worked so hard to save. If you have at least $250,000 in savings and investments, I'd like a few minutes of your time to show you what we're doing differently at Hamilton Wealth Management. So please call our office or visit our website, hamiltonwealthmanagement.com.
To meet with Mr. Hamilton, call 585-381-9870 or go to hamiltonwealthmanagement.com. That's hamiltonwealthmanagement.com. Advisory services offered through Wealth Plan Partners. Securities offered through Securities America, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Hamilton Wealth Management and Securities America companies are separate entities.
Are you looking to update the kitchen, bath, or flooring in your home, but don't know where to begin? Whether it's cabinetry, carpeting, hardwood flooring, tile, or kitchen and bathroom remodeling, Claridge Design Center in Chai Paul Plaza is the place to start. Locally owned with over 25 years in business, Claridge custom designs and builds quality remodeling projects throughout Rochester and Monroe County. At Claridge, the visions and ideas you have for your home are developed with the experienced Claridge designers to make your dream project a reality. And the quality of service you receive at Claridge is second to none. For more information or to schedule an appointment, call Claridge at 889-5800 or visit their website to meet the Claridge team. See examples of their finished work at claridgedesigncenter.com.
Be the light in someone's life at the Mary Cariola Center. We're passionate about making a difference in the lives of children and young adults with developmental disabilities and complex medical needs. The Mary Cariola Center is looking for caring individuals to join our school. including teachers, teachers' assistants, teacher aides, and more. Enjoy school hours, competitive wages, and great benefits. Start your career with the Mary Cariola Center today. Apply at marycariola.org and click on employment.
We are witnessing an unfolding global conspiracy. The New World Order is on their full attack run. America and her sovereignties, freedoms, and liberties are at risk. Join us Monday through Fridays at noon on all WYSL stations for the Dark the Light Show.
A free solution on the WYSL stations.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today. Thanks again for joining us here on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. Give us a call if you want to participate in the show, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Or leave your comments online. Free Solution Facebook page, Free Solution YouTube channel, the Kevin Wilson page, or the Kevin Wilson Twitter account. Wherever you listen today, appreciate y'all being here. Appreciate y'all being a part of the show. And we were talking about the $1.7 trillion omnibus bill that Congress has passed. Let's just run through like a couple of numbers here, right? Like big headline numbers that we always see in these bills. Like they are $772 billion for non-dispense discretionary programs. 800 something billion for the for defense spending, which again, well, I don't want to like just gloss over that either, because we are spending more on defense. We are continuing to increase the amount of money that we're spending on defense, despite the fact that we have now wound down the war in Afghanistan. We're spending more, $858 billion for defense spending. Why are we doing that? What is it for? A part of that is spending that's going to go to Ukraine, right? That we're spending our money to send over there, $44.9 billion for Ukraine and NATO. And again, I generally support the Ukrainian cause. I think that they're on the right side of this. I think Russia's the bad guy in this situation, like clearly. But that doesn't mean that we ought to be sending over that much of our money over there to do that. I don't know that that is a trade-off that's worth making, that our government is wise to spend our money and to get involved further in that situation. There's a huge risk to that situation by the American government getting more involved in a proxy war with Russia, essentially. So that's in this bill too. That's part of this. And a whole bunch of other stuff. People were making fun of like the salmon thing. There's like $70 million or something for salmon recovery. There's always that stuff in here, right? It's like, how did this money for salmon recovery get in? How did this money for, the like smoke detectors at the Metropolitan Opera stuff get in? And then there's like the non-spending stuff that gets in too, right? Like the election reform bill, the Electoral Count Reform Act is also in this bill. And there's some good stuff. There's stuff in there that makes sense, that makes clear, like this is what's supposed to happen when you count the votes and who's supposed to do this and how you certify this stuff. Some good clarifying stuff in there. But again, it's shoved into this like last minute bill. They really, really, really need to get right in this situation, because if there's any disagreement about what the rules ought to be, there needs to be a clear process for both challenge and certification. And that's something that both Republicans and Democrats, if they want our electoral process to appear legitimate, need to get on board with. And this bill seemed pretty good. And there's other stuff too, like there's a part of a bill to ban TikTok on federal devices, which fine. That's a weird one, like almost the opposite stance of what I took at the beginning of the show. Like Congress doesn't necessarily need to micromanage that aspect. Probably the individual agencies could decide whether or not they want TikTok to be on government-owned devices that their employees use, but whatever, right? I guess that's not out of scope of Congress. Just feels a bit silly. There's also a bill not in this one to ban TikTok entirely, which I'm against that. No, shouldn't do that. Chris, I love TikTok, man. It's so much fun. I don't care. There should be ways to protect Americans' privacy and security, but it's a fun app. It's cool. I like it. They'd say it, but we shouldn't ban it. Doesn't seem good. So But all this stuff, right? The the FBI is getting more money. The same topic. They're gonna get $11.3 billion. So they get an increase in funding, despite all the criticism of the FBI from Republicans, Democrats, etc. They're getting more funding, and as this all goes, right? Like because everything's kind of crammed into this one bill. There's just this expectation of like, okay, we're just gonna add a little bit more to most stuff. We're not gonna cut stuff. And if they do talk about cutting stuff, what usually happens is this happened when there's the cuts, whatever, almost 10 years ago now. It cuts. I'm gonna put those in air quotes where, oh, we're gonna cut defense spending. Now they didn't cut defense spending. They just lowered the amount it was increased by. Instead, now we're spending at a rate higher than or almost as high as the ramp up to the Iraq war. When we're in Iraq, when we're in Afghanistan, we're almost spending as much as what we were spending on World War II as a percentage of GDP. Either they know, like the people making these appropriations know something that the rest of us don't, or we are just, again, on autopilot, giving in the whatever increases are needed or not needed, are requested, and just spending blindly. Because what often happens, right, is going back to members of Congress that advocate for their districts or their states to try to get a little bit of extra money to get new equipment built or to keep a base there or whatever it is. Things that might be a good priority, but a lot of times it's, well, I won't vote for this unless you give this contract to this area. Blah blah blah. It's that type of stuff ends up being corrupt, and it because it's not voted on separately. It's hard to pull out of these things. You just got to be able to get in and talk to leadership and get your stuff in, and then everyone's pressured to vote for this bill. You end up with a lack of accountability here. Now, there are ways to fix this. There are ways that Congress could be better about this stuff. And part of that is definitely check out some of the proposals that Justin Amash has talked about on this, because he talks about different ways of reforming Congress. And he's someone who has, who would like to be the Speaker of the House. The funny thing about that position is you don't actually need to be in Congress to be Speaker of the House. Speaker of the House just kind of helps set the rules and make decisions on what gets voted on and when and how, and whether or not there are options to be able to have amendments on bills, et cetera, things like that. So he wants to get back to like an actual parliamentary process, and that could be a solution here. You have Congress actually debate this stuff openly instead of having a multi-thousand page bill that members of Congress can't actually know or understand, and have your stuff get lost in it. Like these guys don't even know what they're voting for. What happens? And this has happened quite a few years now. And they don't need to do it this way. They just choose to do it this way during a lame duck Congress too. Again, remember, keep in mind that the folks voting for this now, some of them aren't going to be in office anymore. They're voting on this thing when it's a new Congress coming in a few weeks, less than a few weeks. So instead, they're voting on this thing without any level of accountability. Some of those folks are on their way out, and there's no room for debate, for being able to focus on small issues within this. Congress could and should, instead of voting on these massive packages, just break it up into small pieces, or at least allow small bits of that to be voted on, right? Like, okay, instead of just doing that, like there's some committee level stuff that goes on, but allow the whole floor to say like, hey, we want to discuss whether or not we want to include this salmon funding. All right. And then instead of that being like snuck into the larger bill, they just have the actual discussion about that, have it on the floor, make whoever really wants this thing go out and discuss it and say, this is why we need it. This is why the federal government specifically should be doing this thing. And this is why you need to vote for it too. And here's why your constituents should support you if you voted for it. And if they do that and it sounds ridiculous, then, well, maybe it shouldn't be included in the first place. That's what's supposed to happen. That's what a level of accountability is supposed to look like. Instead, we got this, where we have a system where members are really only just there to vote how their party asks them to, and go out and fundraise and keep the majority so you can keep your leadership and power. And that is broken. That is dysfunctional. That is not the system of government that we would all like to think that we live in. It's not broken beyond repair. It's just that the people who are in those positions to be able to do something about this need to stand true to the principles that the Constitution is based on, a constitutional republic, and actually do their jobs. And sometimes it's going to be messy. It's going to be harder for them. It's going to be put them in positions where they may have to vote stuff where it's politically inconvenient to take a stand on, where they have to make a decision on the individual stuff that maybe they don't know about, don't care about, or don't feel strongly about. But that's the way it should be. That's the way we are supposed to set up a system where Congress has the power to spend our money. And that level of accountability too. Like, do they need to, if they need to sign off on each individual thing, if they're not just putting things on autopilot and spending these trillions of dollars, which now includes billions of dollars just servicing the national debt. And it's just going to get worse as interest rates go up, as inflation continues to happen. It's just going to get worse there. It exacerbates the problem. There's no accountability, and everyone gets to just shrug their shoulders and be like, well, I didn't know about that individual thing. No, unacceptable. All right. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. Give us a call if you want to talk about this topic or anything else. 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to SimpleTech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that SimpleTech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at SimpleTech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at SimpleTech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. SimpleTech Innovations.
Are you interested in indoor target shooting? Or do you know someone interested in indoor target shooting? The Rochester Rifle Club has an indoor range in Brighton, New York. Shooting is with .22 caliber rifles, air guns, and pistols with reduced loads. We have leagues and open shooting times. For more information or for a membership application, go to our website at rochesterrifleclub.org. That's rochesterrifleclub.org.
Ooh, just what I needed. A mug. This time of year, what do you give? When it's your extra concert, game, or special event tickets to VetTix, you're giving our nation's brave service members and veterans an amazing experience. Give something to those who gave. VetTix. For more information on how you can make a difference right now, or to become a VetTixer, go to vettix.org.
A free solution on the WYSL stations.
All right, welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin with your host today. Thanks again for joining us. We're live here in WYSL until 2 p.m. Give us a call if you want to participate in the show, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000, or leave your comments online as well. Free Solution Facebook page, YouTube channel, or Kevin Wilson pages. And I see Steve Becker on there too, saying just Merry Christmas to me and my family. Merry Christmas to you and your family too as well, Steve. And Merry Christmas to everyone listening today, and Happy Hanukkah. I think it's the fourth day of Hanukkah as well, if that's what you celebrate. And whatever your religion, whatever you're celebrating this time of year, appreciate you all being here. So, but before I go on to the last topic, I do need to make an announcement. Starting January, I'll no longer be in this time spot. There's going to be another show that I'll be playing here. So you'll no longer hear me on Mondays and Wednesdays. It'll be a different show. I'm a victim of cancel culture. No, I'm kidding. So I do appreciate everyone who's been a part of the show, everyone who's listened. I appreciate WYSL for letting me have the opportunity to do this show for so long. Unfortunately, I won't be able to do that any longer on these days. Hopefully, it's not goodbye forever. Hoping to continue doing some online shows, and maybe one day we'll be back on the radio. But for now, starting January 1st, I'll no longer be in this spot. But again, it's been an honor doing this for a long time. Really appreciate WYSL for the opportunity I've had to be here for the last couple years doing this with Radio Free New York and then a free solution. And the good news about this is Larry is still going to be on. He's going to be on Tuesdays. He's going to continue in that spot. It's just me going away. So on Tuesdays, he's going to be kind of doing more the Sharp Way show, which if you're not following him on that stuff, he produces a great show, great guests, and in interesting, engaging topics. So Larry Sharpie, he's still going to be on Tuesdays at 1 p.m., but I'll no longer be in this spot. So again, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I don't know if I'll be back, at any point in time. We'll see. But make sure if you're listening to this on the radio, especially, and you like what you've heard here, you found the topics I brought up interesting and engaging, make sure you follow me on the Free Solution Facebook page, or Free Solution YouTube channel. We're gonna kind of regroup, see what we do next, and then hopefully I'll continue to find a way to be a libertarian voice for people who still appreciate that sort of thing. So thanks again, and I'll have 2 more shows left. So Monday and Wednesday are going to be my last 2 shows, and then in January there'll be another show in this spot. So moving on to my last topic, I want to talk about some local news. City of Rochester, a story came out recently that they're going to be suing gun manufacturers. Again, the city of Rochester, I talked about this on my Monday show. There continues to be a very serious problem with violence in the city, including a shooting of 5 people. 1 person died right in my neighborhood, very, very close to my house. And a lot of these cities are struggling to figure out what to do about that, right? Like regardless of your position on bail reform, that's not something that cities can really address. They can do different things to try to intervene with folks, and they're grasping at some different solutions to be able to figure stuff out, right? Like do they invest even more in police? Do they have people doing foot patrols, whatever it is? And one solution that that a couple cities have now tried to pursue is they're going to try to sue gun manufacturers. So the mayor of Rochester, Malik Evans, said that he was going to bring a lawsuit in New York State against some firearms manufacturers, Beretta, Smith & Wesson, Glock, Remington, Bushmaster, and Polymer 80 and Armor Ally are some of the defendants listed, basically saying that they haven't done enough to stop gun violence in the city, that they are somehow responsible for this. And I think this is going to be tough, right? Like they're saying like they haven't been responsible enough in stopping the distribution of firearms. But the strange thing about that is, right, they're oftentimes not the person selling the firearm, right? Like the issue of gun violence itself, in terms of people who should not legally be able to access a gun, being able to get a firearm and then using it against someone, are, it's not like these companies are usually the ones selling them, right? So you have it go through like retail stores or gun shops, etc. And I don't know if they're gonna end up being successful in this case, and I don't know if it's the right solution either, right? Like it's a lot of times the people who get these guns, they're not always getting them legally either. They're getting them by stealing. They're getting them by breaking into gun stores, which gun stores do have a liability. If they end up having their stuff stolen too many times, they can lose their ability to sell a license if they're not properly securing their firearms. Same thing with individual gun owners. Like you have both a personal and a legal responsibility to make sure that your guns are locked up properly, and you can face consequences for being too reckless in that sense. And that's where a lot of this stuff is. It isn't legal gun owners that these gun manufacturing companies are selling stuff to who are then going out and committing crimes. That's not usually what happens. It's sometimes what happens. But the types of folks, the types of folks who have an intent to hurt someone, the type of person who is involved in gang violence, the type of person who is involved in that sort of street level warfare, they're going to find different ways to do it, and we see that in the in other countries where they're more restrictive use of firearms. And so I understand this is another one of those things where politicians want to look like they're doing something. They want to look like they're taking action. Like Mayor Evans is in a difficult position because the city has seen just hundreds of people shot. Again, it's not that way. It's very concentrated. It's not that way in most neighborhoods in the city. The neighborhood where I live in, it was shocking because it doesn't happen that often. But for the neighborhoods where this is unfortunately almost literally an everyday occurrence, like the thought of inaction is enraging the people. So he's looking for things to do, I think. And again, whether or not this is going to be, I doubt that this would be successful in terms of actually curbing violence in any way. Maybe the suit itself would be successful in the sense of extracting compensation for violence in the city. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. I don't know any of that stuff, right? And we'll see. That's supposed to go towards like violence intervention programs, etc. But I don't know. This kind of feels like a little bit of a miss to me, right? Like that's most of the folks who are using these, who are committing these crimes. Most of the guns that are recovered, they're illegal firearms. There's this quote from one of the news stations says that every single homicide last year was done with an illegal gun, all of them. So if that's the case, does it actually solve the problem to hold the gun manufacturers themselves for this accountable for this? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's going to work. And yet here we are. And again, Rochester's doing it. The mayor of Buffalo, Byron Brown, is also doing it. For what's worth, Bushmaster responded and it's like, nope, that there's to the Buffalo lawsuit and said, there's it's not verified allegations. These are false. They're reviewing the complaint and, they're going to address this. They called it libelous for the Buffalo lawsuit. Again, it's a serious thing. You want to do something about it. And politicians, and for better or worse, being held accountable to their voters, are going to err on the side of taking action, even if it becomes a distraction to some of the actual things that would solve the problems. And again, in terms of gun violence, a bunch of shows on this talking about building community, building hope, giving people opportunities, intervening where possible, and sometimes, using the police too. I know that wouldn't shock many of the folks listening, but that is part of the plethora of tools that could be used to address some of these issues in the city. And that it's hard and it's going to take a while, and and unfortunately, people are dying in the process, and it enrages people. It's understandable. So we'll see what happens with this. I don't know if that's going to go anywhere, but that's where we are. So thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. Again, thank you everyone for listening. Got 2 more shows left, Monday and Wednesday. Make sure you tune in. Try to make them good ones. Have a wonderful week, folks. Take care.